Welcome back to First in Preparedness. Today, in this edition, we're going to take on the highly controversial topic of firearms and how it applies to the fecal versus fan interaction. We are going to be discussing defensive firearms. Notice we are not going to cover assault firearms because those are scary.
Where's my machine gun? Where's my little machine gun?
This is obviously a very complex subject, and like everyone else, we have an opinion and an asshole. But then again, this is just our opinion. In no way, shape, or form is this legal advice, and you alone are responsible for your own stupid decisions. Here's the disclaimer. I am not endorsed by, paid for, given discounts, nor affiliated with any of the firearms manufacturers in this video. All firearms were unloaded and safety checked before this video. When one chooses their defensive strategy in terms of firearms, we must consider the types of firearms in existence. There are four main types of firearms: revolver, pistol, rifle, shotgun. Of course, there are also black powder rifles and muskets, but for the sake of argument, we're going to leave those out as viable options in a real-world scenario. We need to take several criteria into account when choosing a defensive firearm. Some of those criteria should include reliability, ease of maintenance, accuracy, capacity, and lastly, availability of ammunition. Another thing to consider is firearms accessories. Some of these are an absolute must, or at minimum, being a weapon light for positive identification, a sling or holster for weapon retention, and finally, a way to aim your weapon. I would consider these must-haves for any given weapon system. So, if someone came to me and said the end of the world is coming and you can choose only one handgun to take with you, do you know what that handgun would be? The Glock 19. There it is. It's just a regular old Gen 3 Glock 19. Now, you could probably argue that the Glock platform has more 9mm rounds through it than any other on this planet. Now, before all the SIG guys jump down my throat about how good it is, guess what? I also have a SIG 320 or M18, and yes, I absolutely love this firearm. It's easy to shoot. I love the ergonomics of it, and it's a beautiful design. However, even after all of that, I would still choose a Glock 19 as an end-of-the-world pistol. It's reliable, it's accurate, and it's easy to maintain, and undoubtedly 9mm ammo is fairly easy to come by. The Glock 19 is a very good option overall. It's easily concealable and can also fit the Glock 17 17-round magazines. Personally, I don't carry a Glock 19 every day. I typically carry a consecutive number caliber, mainly because I'm not overly concerned about capacity, because most civilian firearms interactions are usually over in 1 to 2 rounds, so I typically carry a bit bigger round. On the opposite side of that argument, I can completely see why law enforcement would want to carry 9mm. The odds of them getting in an extended gunfight are much higher than mine. If you saw the last video, you can see that the weapon is only roughly half the cost of the entire weapon system. You have to have a light for positive identification, a sling or holster for weapon retention, and of course a way to aim it. And lastly, you have to feed it ammunition. Now, let's move on to a logical rifle choice.
Okay, man, pass out them new rifles, know what I mean? Hey, these are nice. Repeaters. Hey, O'Reilly, look at this. Yeah. Looks like you can get your fist down the barrel.
In my opinion, it would be the venerable AR-15. This weapon is easy to shoot, it's easy to maintain, and lastly, it's reliable. Not only that, the amount of customization that you can do on this weapon is unsurpassed by any other firearm in the world. There's a reason they call these Lego guns. I mean, you can swap in and out parts very, very easily on it, And not only that, but should your zombie apocalypse fantasies come to actually pass, you will find more of this rifle ammo around than any other in the US. Now, as you saw in the last video, we had a low-cost strategy set out for a rifle system that included 5 magazines and 500 rounds of ammunition. As I stated before, this would be the absolute minimum that I would consider a viable strategy. And remember, again, the rifle is only half the cost of the entire weapon system. Now, let's touch briefly on the subject of barrel length. Obviously, as we discussed in the past, depending on the type of community environment that you're in, whether that be rural, suburban, or urban, that somewhat will play into determining what barrel length you want to go with. If you're out in a rural area where, you possibly might have, 600 yards or so of range that you would have to cover, I would suggest getting something maybe in 16 inches, 18 inches, maybe even 20 inches. This particular pistol is a 14.5-inch barrel, but would still actually be effective out to that range. Now, let's say you live in a suburban environment. Your engagements might be a little bit closer. You might be only at 400 yards. In that case, going with something in 16, 14, or maybe even 12.5-inch barrels would make sense for that type of scenario. So let's say you live in an urban environment. Your engagement ranges might be 200 yards or so. If that is the case, you may want to look at going with something in a shorter barrel. This particular pistol is an 11.5-inch AR, and I wouldn't go any shorter than 10.5-inch just simply for the fact of the ballistics in those barrels. But there are some advantages to having a shorter carbine or pistol. That being, obviously, the weapon is more maneuverable. Not only that, it's also more concealable. You could break this down and fit this into a backpack very, very easily if you had to. Now, I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for not including the AK-47, and I have my reasons for this. The first of those being the less than friendly political relationship that we have with Russia right now. In other words, we are not allowed to import Russian ammo. So that makes the 7.62x39 more difficult to come by, and it has also driven the price of that round up quite a bit. Not only that, but if you look at the cost of the AK versus the AR platform, it has come up significantly in cost as well. Even the lowest cost AR-15 is maybe only half of that of the lowest cost AK-47. So in other words, half the price. Let's say you live in a state that's less than friendly to the Second Amendment, but you still want to have a semi-automatic rifle. Well, we have a solution for that. It's called the Ruger Mini 14. As you can see, this rifle does not look scary. In fact, it looks like most hunting rifles. However, at its core, it functions almost the same as an AR-15. And there's 30-round magazines available for it. So, this could be a viable option if you live in one of those states. I personally do not own one. One day I do plan on owning one, however. These look like a lot of fun to shoot, and they don't look scary. Lastly, we have the tried and true shotgun. This particular weapon would not be my first choice for a defensive firearm, but it does have a place on this list. These firearms are extremely inexpensive to purchase. Their ammo is available virtually everywhere. And lastly, they are dead nuts reliable. Now, up close, there probably is no more devastating round than that of a shotgun, whether that be buckshot or a slug. The one drawback to this weapon is its capacity. Typically, this is an 18-inch barrel model. I think the tube or the magazine holds 5 rounds. Some of these are available in 20-inch barrels, and if I'm not mistaken, those can hold at least 2 extra rounds. So they are a viable, self-defense option if you live in a state that's less than Second Amendment constitutionally friendly. But like I said, not my first choice, but they are a choice, however. Well, Hopefully that was somewhat educational and hopefully gets you thinking about a possible firearm strategy. I think I'm pretty logical in my choice of firearms or my firearm suggestions. With that, mine is just an opinion, just like everybody else has. And with that, thank you for tuning in to First in Preparedness. Feel free to like and subscribe if you're enjoying our content. And lastly, hit the bell if you want to be notified when we upload new content.